everybody, and welcome to Epic Every Day, our weekday podcast for busy, stressed out Christians who want to find freedom, abundance, and peace. I'm Liz Frericks, and this is my husband, Evan.
Good morning.
And we're so glad you guys are here with us today on this wonderful Wednesday.
Yes, welcome. And thank you for spending part of your Wednesday with us, part of your week here. We really appreciate that. If this episode is helpful or interesting to you or makes you think, please share it with a friend. See what they think. And if you want to tell us what you think, you may do that on Facebook or Twitter, or come to our webpage and make a comment on the episode, or send us an email.
This week we are talking about hope, and since today is Wednesday, our CSC of the day is being centered. Being centered is living out of the essence of who God designed us to be. So we thought we'd talk about how hope sets us free to be ourselves.
I was thinking about that. Like, it's setting us free from what, right? And it's this pressure of performance, I think. Like, when we don't have hope, if we're in charge of our destiny, like Neo says in The Matrix, he doesn't like the idea that he's not in control of his life or something.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of pressure, and we're going to fail every time if we are the ones trying to sort it out. So, yeah, making it work, grit and determination. I mean, American values right there. But this is what we're being rescued from.
Yeah, well, and I think it's so easy when you're in a place of overwhelm, like we talked about Monday and Tuesday, whether it's overwhelm about world situations or overwhelm about the people we love and what's going on in their lives, or overwhelm about what's going on in our life. It's very tempting to think that we somehow have to do something. And I think it both, it becomes this cycle where the more overwhelmed we are, the more we think we got to do something to fix the problem. And then the more we become even more overwhelmed, and that reconfirms
I didn't do enough.
Right, exactly. And so it leads to more overwhelm because you're like, I tried and it didn't work, and now I'm even more stressed out.
And I think with that model, you could see how that's really a trap, and there's less and less freedom every time you go around that circle.
Right.
Even though we think we're exercising our freedom by doing all this stuff. Like, I'm free to really run my life into the ground if I want to.
Yeah, it makes me think about the analogy from yesterday that I was talking about with putting together furniture. You are totally free to put together the furniture every single way other than the instructions, but you probably won't get the results that you want.
I'm just glad Dr. Seuss doesn't design furniture in the real world, because that would be extra confusing.
Seriously. Maybe it would become intuitive if we did it all the time.
What?
Dr. Seuss furniture.
Oh. So and then regular furniture would be easy peasy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that we don't have to make things work out, and that it's not up to me. Well, nothing's really up to me. There's this outside, it's God's world, not mine.
Yeah, I love that. I was actually just thinking about in Genesis where it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Yeah. He made everything that exists. And so he is the author. That's the way that I like to think about it, because it's easy for me to start thinking that I'm the author. Like we were saying, that I have to somehow make things turn out. But it's the author's job to make sure that the story turns out the way that they designed the story to turn out. And maybe I just really like that analogy, being a writer myself, but I love the way that the characters work together. As an author, I'm very intentional about which kind of characters I put in my story and what their character traits are and how they work together. My main character, I take them through a specific journey, and then I put the people in their lives that they need to go through that emotional journey, to learn the stuff that they need to learn.
Not just to torture them.
Right, exactly. And I don't try to make it difficult for them, but because of the character traits that I start with, they need to have a certain amount of kinds of circumstances. It's like one time when I was looking at Lois and Clark fanfics, I think regardless if you're a Superman fan and if you watched the New Adventures of Superman, I forget exactly what it's called, but the Lois and Clark show from the 90s, yes. because of the way of because of who Lois starts out being in the first season, there are certain events that she has to go through. And because I was interested in writing a Lois and Clark fanfic, which I did do, I was trying to analyze, like, what events does she need to have? Like, she needs to learn that she's not as awesome as she thinks she is, that she can make
some
mistakes.
humility.
Right, but it's interesting because her pride is a cover for her insecurities.
Sure.
But she has to really, like, acknowledge those and accept that she can't be the best all the time. And then she also has to lose Clark at some point, because otherwise she doesn't go through the, like, wait, she doesn't have enough of an impetus to decide to have a relationship with him.
Yeah.
And so those are key events that have to happen. If you look at Lois and Clark fan fiction, you know, the vast majority of fanfics have those two elements in them in order to move the story forward.
Yeah.
Just because that's Lois's character. And it's the same way with us. Like, we have to have certain events, certain lessons that we learn in order to grow and to move the story forward. And it's that way with everyone's lives and with the, you know, cultures as a whole, societies. And so God, as the author, is creating those things. And our job is not to be the one to be like, how do we get from A to Z? It's to just be who God's called us to be. You know, we talk all the time about Ephesians 2:10, for we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Like, that's what we're supposed to do. And we talk about in 1 Corinthians 12, which Paul uses the analogy of a body to talk about the church and how we're called to be a hand, or we're called to be an eye, or we're called to be a foot. And by being who God's called us to be, God uses that to move the story forward.
Yeah, I love how it is good to do things God's way. It gives us more freedom. It is the only way to engage with hope, but just that it's good. Like, a good life is a life lived, you know, seeking God.
Right.
And that all reminds me, you know, so going on in this Lamentations chapter 3, I read part of it yesterday, but the next few verses after what I read yesterday, so Lamentations 3 in 27 through 32, it says, "It is good when a young man carries the yoke of discipline in his youth. He is to sit apart and remain silent, because the Lord has laid it upon him. Let him fall face down in the dust, so there may yet be hope. He will endure being slapped in the face, bringing him public disgrace. Indeed, the Lord will not always reject us. Though he causes grief, his compassion abounds according to his gracious love." I was thinking about that last part there, like, causing your character's grief as the author is really out of love and wanting there to be a bigger expression of the true nature of your character. I mean, that's what we talk about every Wednesday. Mm-hmm. We want to express ourselves fully. And who are we? We're someone that God designed inside and out. And the full expression of that is a glorious thing. It glorifies God. Mm-hmm. And we should seek that. I think all too often we're kind of distracted by the fleshly parts of us that we need to be growing out of, and the things that need to change, and the problem areas. And we're like, so it's easy to like be like, well, I just need to like not be me anymore, really. Because all I see is this stuff. But we want to look for the ways God made us and move forward in those areas, our strengths and our talents and our passions, because I believe God's written those on our hearts as a kind of a compass to point us which way we ought to be going.
Right. Yeah. And like I was saying before, being who we're supposed to be is what changes the story. Mm-hmm. It's not doing something in particular, something that's outside of our comfort zone. Well, I mean, it's outside of our comfort zone, but outside of our character.
Right. And it's, the situation that we need to make a good choice that's where God's going to put us through these things.
Right. And we love Speed Racer, the movie, because that's kind of what that movie is about. It's about a few different things, but one of them is that just by being who you're supposed to be, that's what changes the world. Mm-hmm. The makers of the film used Speed Racer's ability to drive a car to change the world, And he never he changed the world continuing to do what he was good at. It's not like he was like, I need to change the world. I'm going to become a politician or, whatever
or a
it
preacher.
is. Right. Yeah. Instead, he drove a car and he changed the world.
Yeah. It's tricky. I mean, we have this core aspect of who we are, and that can never change. We get into a lot of trouble trying to change that, becoming an actor all the time, pretending to be someone we're not. But at the same time, there are that other side of us that does need to change. The nice thing about God is he's always unchangeable. And in all the things that we need to change and the ways that we grow and the ways that we stay the same, he is our constant hope and our constant, North Star and anchor and every other thing you want to say about that. He is the unchanger, the unchangeable.
As always, pick whether today is going to be awesome or not, whether you're going to strengthen those neural pathways to look for the good things or to look for the not so good things. We love you guys and we are praying for you. Thanks to everybody that's been listening to the show and sharing the show. We really appreciate it. If you have found this episode helpful, please do share it and come back tomorrow. And we are going to continue our discussion on hope and talk about how it's anchored in God's character.
Hey, that's what I was just talking about. There's a little preview there.
Exactly.
We'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for listening.
Have a great Wednesday.